As if by magic, we are live. Holy moly. Okay. Welcome everybody. We got something cool. This is a rare treat. We got a couch full of people, and I'm extremely excited. If you're joining us live on the broadcast here, my name is Eric Wright, otherwise known as at DiscoPosse, host of the DiscoPosse Podcast, and we're doing a live stream because this is the kind of fun that we have. And I'm joined by an amazing set of folks here. We've got the one and only John Meyer, who's with us today. So John's joining us here to talk about cloud goodness. We have the also inimitable Michael Levan, who, if you don't know him as the NJ DevOps guy, if I was really smart, I would have all the things on the bottom, but I don't have a producer. So, I do recommend people make sure that you follow all of us there. We'll share out on social. And yeah, we've got a new setup. This is Studio 41.
This is freaking awesome.
Yeah. Really so we're trying out this new method because it's a good way for us to add in a new elements to having live content on the channel, and then at the same time, bring people together, because we haven't been together for a long time, and it's really hard to remember what it's like to be here. So actually, tell you what, let's do the quick official intros. John, tell the folks who you are, where you're at, and of course, before we do that, don't forget to smash that like button or gently tickle it or press it moderately, whatever the appropriate thing is to do to that like button, as well as hit the subscribe. We're just about to crack 7,000 subscribers, so thank you, all you amazing folks. This is fantastic. So there you go. John Meyer, tell us who you are and where to find you.
First, I think you should have a live ticker and see how many people hit that like, subscribe as we're here live exactly. On it, just like the Mr. Beast style as it goes up and down. All right, folks, my name is John Meyer, the John Meyer Podcast, also Meyer Media. I'm here having a blast, testing out this live stream, and we're just going to have an awesome conversation. You can follow me at @_John Meyer on Twitter as well. I am the host of that podcast where we have that natural conversation and that style. Plus, we have a lot of fun. And I can't really tell you on how the conversations goes because it's unscripted. So whatever you want to talk about.
That's the best part. That's what I really enjoy about this. And Michael, so this is a neat crossover for me, because what I found is people are learning about different players in the space. You do a ton of work around DevOps, but let's just talk about your background and where folks can find you online.
Absolutely, yeah. So my name is Michael Levan. You can find me at the NJ DevOps guy on Twitter. You could also find me on LinkedIn at Michael Levan. I do a lot of stuff in the Kubernetes and Cloud native space today, whether it's content creation, whether it's consulting, whether it's a lot of research, public speaker, published author, content creator, consultant, all of that good stuff.
You do some things. You do a lot of things. Like that is the wild thing. So, and I got to give a shout out to the one and only Boo Lamb. Boo's a fantastic content creator himself. He just gave us a shout out on chat there. And if folks want to go over and above, we've got this little neat thing we can do called super chats. So super chats are a neat little YouTube feature. If you wanted to get your chat up front, you can click the super chat button, and that's a chance for you to be able to get to the top of the list. So if you want to press one of those, we're going to be reading those out towards the end of the chat. All right, let's set the stage, and hopefully this sounds okay, because we're literally just like set this up sort of randomly, and we're going to have fun. I'm going to be doing the camera switching live. Normal humans would have a producer for this stuff, but we are not normal people. So I'm going to put down the laptop here. I'm probably going to have to pick it up because the chat is on the laptop. So that was my mistake.
We should pass it back and forth. You do a little, I'll do a little, chatting back. And
that would be a good way to do it. Yeah. That's it. I need a full-time producer for this stuff. So if you want a full-time producer gig and you like making no money at all and you live in the New Jersey area, we've got an opening for you.
I qualify for two of those. The no money bits.
Yeah, exactly. We definitely have. I've got good coffee, so I can give that. So, all right, we're going to talk about the broken phrase that it always drives me nuts, and this is digital transformation. And without cursing to describe how kind of broken that phrase is and the mythology around digital transformation. So people truly often think that digital transformation is a digital thing, that the digital transformation is around products and it's around what cloud you're in or whether you're using Kubernetes. Oh, you can't be digital transformed if you're not using Kubernetes. Well, in 5 years, there will be a second Kubernetes. If anybody is smart enough to use Nomad, I'm just putting it out there. I know a guy that has a Pluralsight course or two on Nomad. The only person that doesn't have a hashicorp.com email address that creates content about Nomad, so go check that out on Pluralsight. But digital transformation is a misnomer in that we assign it to the fact that it's the tools that lead to the outcome. But I want to talk to you right out of the gate, Michael, because you've been in the DevOps community for a long time. Let's talk about the human side of transformation and really what you've seen kind of play out.
Yeah, I mean, I can go into an incredible amount of detail with this, but I'm a firm believer at a high level that we've all kind of been doing the same thing for 20 plus years. There's just a new name on it, and maybe a new UI and a new SDK that we're interacting with. But at the end of the day, it's all the same thing. Networking is networking and infrastructure is infrastructure. I believe that a lot of what we need to do is focus more on the team aspect and the organization aspect versus trying to throw technology at problems to fix them. Because, 20 times out of 10, technology is never going to fix a problem. It's always, a team thing. It's always figuring out what a team needs to do, what an organization needs to do to have that digital transformation versus, throwing Kubernetes at it or something. And, as everybody knows me, I'm a big proponent of all these technologies, but a lot of this stuff or a lot of things that I always say is don't just do it just to do it, have a purpose. I was having this conversation around service mesh, for example. This is this whole digital transformation thing of, hey, you need a service mesh. It's like, well, no, do you actually need it? We'll figure out why you need it. And that's just an example there, but that goes for all technologies that we work with today. Figure out why you need to do something, but more importantly, figure out why the team needs to do it.
And John, of course, you have worked in the AWS community directly and over the course of time. So I think if we look at how your progression has gone, where you were sort of cloud first in that how you entered it, but you came from the data center space and operating, especially SMB IT. So it's kind of cool to talk about your personal progression through the digital transformation journey.
So as you mentioned, coming from a traditional data center background and then actually moving over to a cloud background, I worked with a number of companies that had their data centers and were just stuck in that aspect. And the reason that they're stuck there is because of everybody still stuck in their same ways. And utilizing like a digital transformation isn't that just like a new term for like DevOps? I mean, I don't mean to be controversial, but are we just changing the name and it's really a culture change and a shift and a way to look at new things and how they're doing it? An example, I used to rack and stack servers for a living and then work as a server admin and then progressed on to like cloud and understanding that those data centers, those folks that were stuck in those ways, didn't want to move on because that's how they did things. And it was just, I don't want to change. I don't want to do anything. But with DevOps, it's like you have to change. You have to change that culture shift. So isn't digital transformation a culture shift?
Yep. Yeah, literally. I don't think it's technology related because again, it's like, we've been doing the same thing forever. Like nothing at the core has changed. The only thing that's actually changed are maybe a new UI, maybe a new SDK or something, but the actual change that every organization needs to survive and to, be ahead of your competitors and all of this stuff is, actual transformation of the team, of the organization, of how things are happening versus just chucking technology at stuff and spending millions of dollars.
Now, this brings up the challenge of, are we really just like talking soft language? And this is one of the problems we bump into is that we look through mainframe to distributed to, different types of distributed architectures. We talk about soft skills and it feels to me like this is a very soft approach to stuff because what we're ending up with right now is that we're going to have something where it's not a specific thing. Like you can't go to school and take a course that will teach you digital transformation. It's behavioral psychology, it's team dynamics, it's culture. It is not at all a technology thing. But then I feel like we're kind of copping out, because how do you do it? It's like you can't teach, there's no school, like you can't go to a university and take a cool school course about startups, because it's not the same, like an intellectual approach to it. You can kind of retrofit some of the lessons from it in the same way that we think that, oh, look at that, bees know math because they make hexagons. I'm like, no, I got bad news for you, but the math was learned from the bees, not the other way around. Like, how do we teach somebody digital transformation? Like, how do you prepare a new technologist, or even more challenging, an existing technologist, for like surviving change?
I'd like to take that one step further. Is how do you, not even an existing, how do you drive that change? Is it a top down, bottom down approach, or is it a joint approach? I mean, how is that driven? If I say I come into a company and I want to digitally transform my company, really, what does that mean you're doing to the company? What is that? Do I come in there and I feel like it's the comic that you see, you just can't be technically advanced by throwing out keywords, Kubernetes, cloud. Like, come on, like
there goes my whole shtick.
Crap, I'm out of a job.
My career's over now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But how is the approach? I mean, do I come in as an engineer and I'm saying, you know what, we need to digitally transform our company? How do I know what I need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think even it all depends on the organization, because, as you guys have done as well, I've worked at startups, I've worked at companies that had 5,000 people, I've worked at nonprofits, I've worked in government, healthcare, literally all over. And what I'll always say is the technology may have been the same for a couple of years, going from, job to job, so to speak, but everybody was always different. The way that it was implemented was different. The way that it was thought about was different. The good things to do and the bad things to do, and this is a good practice, this is a bad practice. I've been in organizations where it was a good practice here, and over here it was a bad practice. We all know what that looks like. So it's also very difficult to train somebody on, how to fit in a good culture, how to do like true digital transformation from a cultural perspective, because every culture is different. So it's like, how do you do it?
Today's best practices are tomorrow's what the hell were we thinking? Like, there are certain core ethos things that will come through. And Randy Shaup, I've always had an incredible respect. Randy is a fantastic human, and he is quoted, as he should be, for saying that basically, like, microservices is just SOA done right. Like, we've talked about service-oriented architecture for decades, and I remembered finding a development, like, it was like project management and development lifecycle book from university, and it was hilarious because here I was with this thing of learning about development methodologies, and it talked about RAD, as a development methodology for instead of the SDLC traditional waterfall approach. But in the end, what happens is you've got this rapid application development, which thus became agile, and we've renamed the methodologies, but in the end, it becomes a delivery mechanism to do the thing. And like Kubernetes, I use the quote from, what's the name of the show? Goodness gracious. There's a great show on AMC about technology startups, and Halt and Catch Fire. Halt and Catch Fire, yeah,
awesome show.
And one of the famous lines says, "Computers aren't the thing; they're the thing that gets you to the thing." And Kubernetes, cloud and whatever it is, it's just a delivery mechanism for the outcome, and that's kind of where I think the world is going. That we've got this move towards outcome-oriented results.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point as well. As you were talking, it kind of just hit me. Organizations and people and engineers and project managers were doing this thing, and then they put a name on it and they called it agile. The funny thing is that that's always how this goes, right? Like, we're doing something and then we slap a name on it. So this isn't like none of the things that we're doing are new. It's just things that we've always been doing, and we decided to put a name on it, or give it 50 different thousand names. Look at the DevOps title and the SRE title and now the platform engineering title and this and that. It's always the same thing. We're doing the same stuff. It's just a matter of how you look at it. And I think that's a really big part, like from an organization standpoint, is it's very difficult to do something the wrong way. Like there are, of course, bad practices just in general. Don't have one server running your production workloads. You should probably scale that out. Things like that, right? But it's very difficult to just do something wrong because there's a magnitude of different ways to do things right, and everybody's going to have a different opinion on it. So it's less of like doing something the wrong or right way, and it's more of like, hey, what's your opinion on it? Does this work for us? Because something that works for one organization, I can guarantee is not going to work for the next organization or the next 10 organizations.
Right.
So again, it goes back to like we've all been doing all of these things for so long, but then it's like, what direction do you want to go in with it?
Yeah, and Alan on the chat brings up, he says, digital transformation is the latest buzzword term that companies are using to try to start upify their culture in an attempt to shake up culture, workflows, and org structures. And I think that really goes to the point that you're making of like, I used to call it intrapreneurship, and I think that's actually an Eric Ries thing, the idea that I worked in a large organization, but I ran my team like we were a startup, and we mapped against waterfall project methodologies, but I would run sort of an agile-ish method for ops, which was even more bizarre. People are like doing that. So that's always kind of funny. And also, yeah, shout out that Halt and Catch Fire is fantastic. So there you go, Alan. Fully agreed. One of my favorite shows ever. And especially given that I work in startups, I know this a lot. Like this, and Jay says the buzzword generator's on fire. Wireless blockchain cloud. This is. I know this pain too well. Jay and I love. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter, as well as just a great human and somebody who I've enjoyed. That we watch this industry swing to like disaggregated, hyper converged, and we talk about containerized monoliths, and you're like, I think I don't know what you're saying anymore. But
all the latest buzzwords you just captured.
Yeah. And it's lessons that we're learning, but in practice, we're seeing it. Like John, you've done the cloud piece for a long time, and you've been in both like cloud optimization, in cloud orchestration, in cloud evangelism in general. Like when someone says like, I want a cloud, like what does that mean in the people that you talk to?
Well, I think some of the parts with the digital transformation, we have to clarify, does it really mean going to the cloud? Does digitally transform mean that I have to take my business to the cloud? The answer is no. You're not going to the cloud. You're working on your, but has this all come up with when the cloud became really popular, right? So is digitally transforming a cloud buzzword that ultimately came down to those who still need to migrate to the cloud or want to go to the cloud, right? Oh, you should digitally transform your company. Yeah, but I don't have enough to go to the cloud. No, that's not what we're talking about. But what does it really mean on going towards it and working with the cloud and working with customers going to it? When they asked me what the cloud is, I was like, yeah, it's that out there in the sky. But it's really basically your application hosted on somebody else's servers. That's really all it's about. But the cloud provides so many benefits. Now we're talking about all cloud providers. There's unique services and capabilities for everybody. And I could go with the traditional tagline, the breadth and depth of technology and services. We all know who that one is. And they offer that quick on demand where you can be speed and have agile and get out there as quick as possible and develop. But is that being digitally transformed when you're going to the cloud, or am I just changing the way my company works and operates when we think of new services for applications or how we implement things?
Yeah, and a good thing that Boo Lam on the LinkedIn chat brought up. He says, I've always talked about digital transformation from a business perspective with customers, taking old business processes. Sorry, I'm Canadian, so I say processes instead of processes.
That's all right. So is
Boo's also a fellow Canadian, so I shout out, go
Yes.
Canada, Team Canada, me and the other 11 people that are from there. But the technology always comes after the defining the outcome, and I think that's a piece like. Michael, especially in the consulting world where you're having to take on a project, and quite often they'll say like we want to do a thing, and you have to really like back them up and say, well, actually, what are we trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, so this is it's kind of like a weird area for me because, if you go on my Twitter and if you go on my LinkedIn, like you see that I'm always putting out stuff. You could arguably call it technical marketing of myself, but when I get down to it, whether it's a course that I'm creating, I'm consulting for a customer, whatever the case may be, I always put on my engineering hat because like deep down I'm an engineer. It's what I've been doing for over a decade. So when I go into an organization, again, whether it's consulting, content, whatever, from a business perspective, they say, oh, we want to digitally transform. Oh, we want to move to the cloud. Okay, why? So I'll give you an example. Let's take a standard data center approach where you have 3 data centers and you want to have high availability and scalability across 3 data centers. One goes down, one goes up. Maybe you have a hot cold method, maybe you have a hot hot method, whatever the case may be. Doing that takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of networking there. There's a lot of uplinks. There's a lot of, hey, is my bandwidth good? Hey, do we have 2 ISPs? Et cetera, right? To go from multiple data centers. In the cloud, you turn on auto scaling and it's on, right? So if somebody said, oh yeah, this is why we want to do it, that's a better way of thinking about it versus, well, I was on this marketing page here and they said we got to digitally transform, so let's go digitally transform. No, like let's actually think about why we want to do things versus, well, let's just do it because it's the popular thing to do. And bringing up what you guys just said, especially in today's world, I would say, I think it's always been this way, but maybe like the past couple of years or so, I've seen it a lot. Technical marketing is very powerful, and depending on who's behind it, and again, I don't mean to, I'm not putting anybody down or anything like that, but there is a big difference between somebody that's doing technical marketing with a marketing background and somebody that's doing technical marketing with an engineering background. Very different.
I feel seen.
Very
different. I think he's talking about both of us.
Exactly.
Oh my,
right here, dude. Right here.
It's
leave the camera on him.
But it's very different because this is, I think, where people begin to get confused because they see the standard marketing approach of let's throw out monolith and microservice and this and that and blockchain and yada, whatever, right? Versus like if you're going into technical marketing saying, what is the problem that we're trying to solve from an engineering standpoint? How are we going to make people's lives easier? And then in turn, I believe that's true digital transformation because then at that point, you're thinking, how am I going to make this team's life easier? How am I going to make this organization's life easier? And then you provide the technical marketing aspect of things from that perspective. So there's a lot of buzzwords that happen, and there's a lot of things that people aren't thinking about depending on where you're getting your information from. Hopefully that makes sense. I feel like I'm rambling, but
no, totally. And it's funny because Boo brought up this idea that it is true that we have and it's funny. I'm a technologist that ended up in marketing, and we have this there's a very distinct set of requirements around being a pure digital marketer and understanding the psychology of marketing, as in like attention grabbing, whatever. But there are a few of us, who are hopefully in this room right now who share the ability to merge those things together. And it's a bit more of a unicornish type of delivery method, but most like a pure marketing presence for a technology company is very much centered around capturing eyes, saying stuff that's compelling. And look, I did this. It hurt me inside to do this, but I said at one point, I'm like, I'm going to write a blog just to mess with people. And I wrote a blog, and it was called 23 Things That only sysadmins from the 90s will understand. Just because I'm like, I'm going to BuzzFeed this bad boy.
And there was only 19 on the list. No,
so like I was getting like, about 40,000 views a month on my blog. So I put this out and I posted it on Hacker News, and I got 10,000 views a day for 7 straight days, because it was like, there's a way to like capture attention, but it didn't lead me to the message or to an outcome. It was like, there's pure stuff of like, can I get someone to go to the site? Can I get someone to show up at the event? But then what do we do with it? And this is digital transformation in my mind of like, we got to the cloud and okay, yeah, you're using the cloud, but what are you using it for?
Yep.
And are you using IaaS? There's nothing wrong with that. That's also the biggest misnomer. There's nothing wrong with using the cloud like a data center if it meant that you're getting other benefits from it. And this is I face this all the time where I tell people moving to the cloud for IaaS is seen as a failure to some people because they're purists, they're cloud purists. And I'm like, well, but if you're all this legacy infrastructure and you need to get it there, you can never transform it before you get there. You never refactor the app on premises. That's right. I said premises because that's the word. That's the word. So when you try to transform it on premises, it takes years and then it doesn't move over. And then you're like, oh, you try and move it into microservices. You're like, well, no, just shove it out in the cloud, make it charged by the hour. And all of a sudden you're like, you have got a fire lit to move the data layer to, PaaS or database as a service. And then you're incented to like, hey, what if we could like lighten up the front end by splitting out the web front end and maybe let's make this a serverless architecture or whatever it's going to be, right? And that's the transformation. There's no right way to do it. And in fact, the wrong way is the best way in my mind because it means you're trying, like you're experimenting, you're moving. This is what it's about. The cloud is about agility. It's expensive if you make mistakes, and we all make mistakes, but like that's it. And like, John, you know this from, using Deep Racer to teach people about what machine learning is. They were inadvertently using technology, but like almost gamifying. And this is actually Jay Metz brought this up in the chat. He says it's basically like gamifying life by like moving to this stuff. Like what's the impact of making it fun and making it exploratory to get people to adopt new technologies?
I like how you said moving over to basically a lift and shift over to the cloud. And you said there's nothing wrong with that. And I was like, wait, oh my God, that goes against a lot of the traditional methods that you should refactor, do your stuff. But you indicated that it's lighting a fire for them to get it done, to actually digitally transform their product and utilize the services that are available. Michael, I have to touch on that. You went from digital transformation and you talked about marketing, and then Eric jumped in there. I'm like, wow, that's actually a new method that I haven't thought of, because you're changing the way that your outlook is and your reach on who you're trying to achieve. From technical marketing to using social influencers for technical marketing, as long as they have the engineering background and understand it. You can use social influencers that have nothing to do with it. They're going to get you a lot of views, but the retention's not going to be there.
Yeah, and that's where I think that there's a big difference between getting followers and providing value. So when I first started going out and doing my own thing and trying to build this audience, I was really into the how many followers do I have? What's going on here? Are people liking what I'm putting out, etc. Once I stopped caring about that and was just like, how can I provide value to people? That's when everything started building, right? Because at the end of the day, and you guys brought this up, well, both of you guys brought this up, where companies are so focused on just getting eyes, getting a sign up here or getting a POC there or whatever. And in my opinion, they're all missing the point. The point here is that whatever product you have, you are trying to provide value to an organization. If you think about providing value, all of that stuff is going to come, right? And I have this conversation all the time where people are always like, how can I make more money? Instead of thinking about how you can make more money, think about how you could be so good at something that nobody can ignore you. Once you're so good at something that nobody can ignore you, the money's just going to come in naturally. Making money is the easy part. Same thing with getting a product out there, right? Providing value and figuring out how to provide that value and enjoying the process, that's the hard part. Getting users to sign up, getting people to buy your stuff is easy once your product is so good at one thing that nobody can ignore it, right? It's the same thing with an iPhone. Nobody goes to Verizon and is like, I don't know about this. Everybody just knows it's an iPhone. I'm going to go buy an iPhone. And your product should be thought about the same way.
and it's going to cost me more than my first car. And that's probably because I'm older than dirt, and I bought an old used car. But and it was fun. Jay brought up a great point. He said social influencers equals digital booth babes. You do have this problem of the influencer being there for the purpose of influence. And I talk about this. It's like when AI becomes self-aware. That's where it's dangerous, right? That's why we're afraid of AI, not because of AI as a practice of using the technology, but when it becomes self-aware and it finally says, "Hey, you know how I can make the Earth last longer? Get all these wacky humanoids off it because it will last a lot longer." And one of the problems I had always in this idea of social influencers is that we use digital influencers to reach an audience, but at some point the influencer believes that they're the audience and they think they're the value, and it's you want to say like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but no, it's actually the people that listen to you that we're after. You're the route, you're the pipe." And good on them. Like, that's it. To achieve that audience and grow it with integrity is this thing, but it is an unfortunate thing that we have this split where people are purely there to bump their audience count. Look, at I do it right. I'm telling you to smash the like button and hit subscribe and do stuff like that. But it's because I believe, I hope that I do it with integrity, and I'm ultimately bringing a larger transformative message for the humans, to get there. And like, I've always been human centric, and that's a good thing too as well. Talk about human centric, referring back to what we talked about with the marketer versus the technologist. And Alan brings up a great point. He says, "I had similar experiences being in corporate training for 20 years, which is funny because I know Alan doesn't look, I think he's like 22 now. Like, did you start when you were 2? So having a technical background helped me not only to understand the subject matter, it also helped to effectively communicate it to others. And that's the method of delivery is often as important as I've known great technologists who probably wouldn't pass a Turing test. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to be effective communicators. So there's this fun thing of meeting in the middle. Like, yeah, Jay says, what really scares me about AI is not that it's just imperfect. It's deeply, deeply flawed. Garbage in, garbage out, right? And that's the tough part, right? That's why when we go into digital transformation too, it's like people adopt new technologies and they're thinking, do I what happens if I take on cloud, but I've got VMware all over my resume? Does that mean I'm invalid?
I think digital transformation is speaking the language of the culture. Those who you're talking to, like, you have the knowledge to go in there and understand the people that are really you're trying to impact. You're not there trying to talk to like the C-suite, and you're not there to say, "Hey, listen, you're going to digital transform." You're there to talk to the people who are doing the work and understand them as a person and get to know them, because you're ultimately affecting and trying to change their personality and how they handle their processes, maybe how they look at things, right? And how they move forward. Michael, let me ask you a question. For digital transformation, what's the first thing that you should be really doing when you go in and you talk to somebody about it? What's the first step you take in order to digitally transform? I feel like we're saying this word so often. Can we just say DT or something? It's like the latest. And we need a bingo card for all the other words that we throw out.
DT actually stands for delirious toxins, which was from, it's a part of an effect of alcoholism. And I say like DTs is generally that awful feeling you get as you're going through a digital transformation project. It's not far off.
Back to the question, Michael, because we're
sorry. It's going to be that kind of podcast.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first question that I always ask, especially from I don't know if I'm supposed to call it DT or not, from that perspective, and it's just, I personally think that it's the only question that actually matters. What are we trying to do here? What problem are we trying to solve? Right? Because if I, kick down a door and say Kubernetes everywhere, like I'm not doing anything for anybody. But if I walk in and I say, okay, what problem are we trying to solve, right? And I need to make sure that there are engineers in the room, because if there's not, it could be too high level. It could be, yeah, we're trying to do X, Y, and Z. But if you walk into a room of engineers and you're like, okay, what problem are we trying to solve? And the engineers give you specific problems, at that point, you could actually then talk about, okay, we need this technology or we need this culture shift. It's funny, I was talking to somebody fairly recently that's implementing Kubernetes, and a lot of the stuff that they were talking about, they thought that it was Kubernetes specific, but it was actually all people specific. And I was like, y'all need to get your house in order before you even think about like implementing new technology. So I always ask the same question, like, what are you trying to do here? And then go from there.
Is digital transformation getting your house in order? That's actually a good
Yeah.
question. I like that. Eric, is digital transformation for everyone? Meaning enterprises and startups. Does it fit everybody? Should everybody try to implement it?
Yes.
Well, that was a great podcast, folks.
Yeah.
We're going to cut the live stream a little short. We've answered.
I need a much better we need more arguing. We're all agreeing on this stuff, but the as a thought process and approaching automation in general. That's why I always say like automation is a great method to increase viability for future. It's future proofing things. When you digitally transform, it's making you map out what you do today. It's making you go through and like you can't automate what you don't understand. It forces you to kind of like break out what are the steps that occur in order for this process to exist. And as you do that, that transformation then says, okay, well, if I move the front end server and I move the data server, then what are the additional things we have? And I came from a background of business continuity and disaster recovery for years because I thought bigger than I need to stand up a server. I always thought like I need to stand up a server, but what are the things the server speaks to? What are the how do we assure resiliency during it? So digital transformation is about process. There you go. I said it right. Process transformation. And it's because you're preparing your organization, you're preparing your business for continuous evolution. There's going to be stuff that's left behind. I got bad news for you. If you think that Kubernetes, sorry, Michael, if you think Kubernetes is the only thing that's going to exist, but we've talked about this at length, right? That in fact, it's just the thing now. So why not help to drive people towards it? Mm-hmm. But what they're doing is they're actually learning how to look at the processes more than the technologies. And so then when the next thing comes along, you're like, oh yeah, got it. I have 17 services that run this application. Because that's the other thing too, is that the application patterns are way different. Like we've got SaaS, we've got all these different things. Like if you can, why wouldn't you get rid of standalone applications you can run, move this out to somewhere else? But then do they have an API? Do they have an SDK? And I used to always tell people a vendor would come in and they would pitch me their wares. And I would say, does your product have a fully RESTful public facing API? And, you would know like, well, we've got an SDK. It's a Java SDK. Like, okay, well, I need a programmer to integrate with it. Okay, great. So I don't actually want to use the API for anything. It's a terrible way to run my application. But what I wanted to show was if they're already building that, odds are they're building their application to be consumed by other software, which is the sort of that software defined. And this is a shout out to Jay, who I saw in the chat as well, is that software defined is about software consuming other software, not about humans consuming software. And the idea of services. And it's this, and Jay, I think it's Jay actually brought up the quote. I should bring it up in here. It talks about digital transformation is a way to reach an overarching directional UX automation. It's a user experience. It's a process experience, right?
Yeah. Well, like let's. You bring up a good point. When you're going through this digital transformation, you also have to understand who you should be talking to and what your role should be. So something that you just brought up, there are people, right? There are the foot soldiers, which we need the foot soldiers that, okay, I need to bring up a server. Boom, I'm going to bring up the server. Boom, I'm going to bring up this server. But then there's the people, and I believe that this is what the difference is between like a mid-level and like a senior to principal level, is thinking about exactly like what you just said, Eric. But okay, I'm bringing up this server, but why? What is it going to do for me? What's the thing at the end? And even thinking about from a Kubernetes perspective, I talk about Kubernetes constantly, but I know the end goal isn't Kubernetes. I know that Kubernetes is the stepping stone to get us to what is managing your infrastructure with an API. It's what it is. Underneath the hood, you pull back all of the buzzwords, and Kubernetes is managing your infrastructure with an API. Same thing with Nomad,
Right.
right? It's all the same thing, but you have to, when you're thinking about digital transformation, you have to think about it deep in, but you also have to think about it, the forest from the trees, right? Or whatever that quote is, where like you need to think about, okay, these are the implementation details, but why? Why am I doing this? And again, I think that's what makes people, or that's the difference between, that the mid level of implementing it and that senior to principal level of, okay, yes, we can implement it, but why are we doing this thing? Because if we're not thinking about why we're doing something, we're just going to be chucking technology at things, and you're going to be in the same position in 5 years.
Yeah,
There's a good question, though. How do you get those mid-level or the senior levels to ask the why? How do you get them to understand that we shouldn't just be doing it because I was told to do it and to think about it? How do you incentivize them to not only think about the digital transformation aspect of it, but to take their company to the next level and to care about it? Because culture is one thing. And I don't think that's what some of the things that we actually mentioned was culture is something very key to doing anything within any company, whether it's digital transformation, DevOps, implementing Agile. If your culture isn't there and they're against it, what's driving them to or incentivizing them to help digitally transform? Man, I keep saying that word.
Wait, so and this is the funny thing I got to call out because Jay kindly reminded me that he says this is scary. I actually pulled the overarching UX from a buzzword generator. So that's the hilarity of like that. That is, we are actually a parody of ourselves in a way because that we try and like make fun of it, but in the end, it's underneath that marketing word. Mm-hmm. We do have a thing that we actually like. It is an experience. It is a process flow. It is all of these different things. And so, yeah, it is tough to like, what is it in the end? Like what is digital transformation? And you're like, and this is also a great point. He says, okay, here's a discussion. Digital transformation is neither digital nor transformative.
Well, that ends this conversation. Jay, thanks for appreciate the comment.
Right.
All right.
Looks like my signal's going quiet. I'm afraid I can't hear you.
Yeah. Sorry, we've been just cut short.
Yeah.
But really, how do you incentivize somebody to do these business aspects and processes? And notice that I didn't use our keyword that we're talking about because I tried to avoid it a little bit. But as somebody who is either down in the trenches or is a worker or a mid-level or even back to a director type level that has no type of buy-in, whether they transform or not, mm-hmm. How do you incentivize them to move forward? I mean, yeah, money is one thing, but that's not really kind of at the end that kind of just stops all processes. You're not going to continue on.
Yeah, well, this is the fun I bump into is when you try and create a team that wants to do something differently and move the ball, like sort of like keep moving the ball. And I think that's really what it is moving the ball. So we think of moving the ball, then it means that we're going to, again, just not just do the thing that we do, the status quo. And this is like another sort of classic markety, salesy buzzword thing of like, what's your primary competitor as a startup? Status quo. It's like it's the dumbest answer ever. Of course it is. Like that's why you're disrupting the future and you're digitally transforming the existence of, oh God, like break apart the thing. What are you doing? You're making a team, you're making a person, you're making an organization future resistant, not proof necessarily, but you're like mapping out what they need to do. Because in the end, I used to call it my hit by a bus series. That's a dark way to describe it, I suppose, which is funny for a Canadian. I'm like the darkest person ever, apparently. With
is that a YouTube series I can
yeah, exactly. So I would run a weekly like lunch and learn session with my team about some crazy script that I wrote. And I would call it my, Eric's hit by a bus series. In case that I was not here next week, how does somebody take over this thing? Mm-hmm. And what it did was it actually incented people to be ready for their hit by a bus, series, which was cool. And in fact, this is a human behavior thing, my favorite thing to watch. The best way that you can get somebody to do something that's transformative or new or automated is to tell them that, number one, it can't be done, because we have a human instinct to be like, oh, no, hold on, kid. I think I can do this. And even more so, create a bit of a competitive environment where you can do this. Because somebody would say on a meeting, be like, we do this manually. Like, I don't think there's any way, like, this is how we do it. Every day we load this thing as a CSV, and we load the CSV into the system, and then we do the automation to it. And then I would sit there on this meeting and say, well, I think I could just write a PowerShell script that can pull the CSV in automatically and then just shove it right into the next part of the process. And then next thing you know, 5 minutes after the meeting, somebody else on the team is like, I did it. Because they sort of felt like that they were defending status quo, that they felt this sort of competitive urge to be like, yeah, you're right. And for me, the incentivizing is like, I want to light them up. I want to make them think like, yeah, this kind of sucks. Can I make it better? And better for me, like as a human. I always tell people like that, be the selfish person. Fix your own stuff. Make your life, your day-to-day operational life suck less. And that's, it's not a good marketing phrase at all. We make your processes suck less.
It's like a hold my beer moment.
That would be like, there's like a Dudley Moore movie where he does, he goes crazy, but he's a marketing guy. And then he does all these, I forget what the name was called Crazy People or something. And yeah, they do these marketing phrases, and they're entirely just like, drive a Volvo. They're boxy, but they're safe, but that's what it is. Like, we make it suck less, and it's all about sucking less, right?
Mike, I got a quick question for you. And we talked about the culture that's happening. How many folks are worried about their job if they do this digital transformation? How do they feel that they're going to automate themselves or do a new process around it? Because I have my take on it, and those are old school methodologies, old school thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like my answer is going to irritate people, but
perfect.
Let's see.
All right. So if you guys want some
hands,
controversy here on this live stream, we've got it ready to go. Michael's going to kick it off, and we're going to get started now. The moment you've been waiting for.
So I think there's an uncomfortable reality, but reality is a reality, regardless of if it's uncomfortable or not. There are people that want to excel in their career, and they want to move forward, and they want to do all of these things, right? They want to grow. And then there's the people that want to go to work and do a 9-to-5. People that go to work and do a 9-to-5, they want to do the same repetitive tasks they've been doing for 10 years, because every 2 weeks they look at their bank account and they have a paycheck there. The people that are, want to move forward with their careers, the people that want to make things better, are the ones that are like, yeah, let's go automate. Yeah, let's go do this. Yeah, let's go do that. So you're always going to have two sides of the coin. You're always going to have the people that are like, I'm going to lose my job if I do that. Typically, they're the 9-to-5ers. Whereas the other people that want to think about like true digital transformation and making things better, and making things better from a technology perspective, but from a cultural perspective, those are the ones that are going to go and do it, and they're going to challenge the status quo. But you're always going to have both those sets of people in organizations. I'll give you an example. I worked a little bit of government, only lasted 6 months for this exact reason, because I was always the one challenging the status quo, whereas everybody else was like, no, this is the way we've been doing it, and this and that. And so the harsh reality is that if you want to be a person that wants to make things better, you could probably just be at a point where it's like time to move on, time to go somewhere else. So that's my take on it. My take on it is you're always going to have two types of people, and you have to choose what camp you're in. And it may be an uncomfortable reality where maybe you got to move on, maybe you got to do something else.
I don't think that's controversy at all. I think that's reality.
Right.
I mean, what's happening? And as a manager of any type of company, they have to realize who those folks are, who want 9-to-5, who want to be challenged. And I'm not saying that the 9-to-5ers have to be, move on or do something else. You just have to understand who you're working with, and you have to adapt to them. You have to change their processes, and you have to make them aware that this is going to better them. And we want to get better as a company as well.
Yeah, this is the trick of, I joke sometimes, and I'm like, I know I'm going to like it's again a sort of an irritating thing, but the references from Caddyshack as well. The world needs ditch diggers too. But we have to have that. We can't just have nothing but A players. Like I remember working with the Microsoft Consulting Services team, and if you ever want to sit around a table that would make you want to stick a pen in your ear, is 14 Type A personalities that are all pretty sure they've got the right answer, and they're all like their job depends on them being the one that led the charge, and it became difficult sometimes to work in that environment. But so you needed folks that kind of cover the whole space of, they're going to do day-to-day operational stuff. They're going to be, some people are detail oriented, some people are sort of the movers and the shakers. They're going to say the right words to coach people and incent them to think differently. And sometimes it just doesn't fit. You can be too far out on the edge on either side. You're too stable, and thus you're not going to be able to make it through change. And you're too transformative. You're like, Michael's a little too aggressive on what he wants to change here, because people are like, who moved my cheese like that? He didn't move it. He ground it up. He like put it back in the freezer, and he did other things with, like, it wasn't just moving cheese. He destroyed our cheese. And they will really feel resistive to that stuff. But it's funny, Jay brought up a great point, is what's the difference now between digital transformation and just transformation?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the other great comment he made too is like a lot of what we're hearing is talking about change management. Like automation is like, sorry, I'm going to go to hell for this one. Itil, right? Like Itil was about this idea in like Six Sigma and creating processes around formalizing change, but it allowed you to do automate. And it's counter to what people would believe, because they would say like, well, I can't use automation because I've got an Itil shop. You're like, well, that you actually need automation. Itil enables automation because you can do stuff at each layer, and you've got checkpoints, you've got entry points, you've got exit points, you've got documentation, you've got flow management, you've got auditing. That's what Itil was. Itil was about process control. But unfortunately, when people think process control, they think controlling, as in like do it. They're going to watch what you do every day, and I would go to these change review boards and go through this stuff. And I was I would get pushback all the time. They're like, "Well, you're automating too much stuff. How do we manage it with change management?" Like, easy. I'll go to the meeting. I'll tell you what the thing is going to do, and then I'm going to press the button, and the thing will do the thing. And the outcome will occur as a result of the thing doing the thing. And we can back out the thing by pressing the second button, which undoes the thing. Versus the existing way was like, well, Pete's going to go in and he's going to go into the CLI and he's going to type in these 4 things. And this came from a world of like, you're going to go into MVS1 and JezProd 2, and you're going to you're going to IPL the system. And there's like 7 people on the stream who even know what I'm talking about. One of them is probably Jay, if he's watching. So like mainframe traditionalists that had always had to have super strict, because they have 20,000 jobs that go through a day. But when there's a big change, you're like, that stuff's working. I can't bugger it up. Mm-hmm. So my transformation is like, got to be careful. So if you say transformation, so what is just transformation?
I got to jump in here and ask you a question. You opened the door to Itil. Oh my God. Okay. Let me ask you this. Isn't transformation the process that isn't it the underlying, or should you be thought of as speed and agility? Right.
Right. That's
right.
Velocity is a combination.
But you just introduced Itil. Isn't Itil the slow process? I mean, I'm sorry. I know I'm going to get a little bit, but I feel that Itil had a long process for as speed and agility. You had to wait days for a change to go through to verify the change. And those who actually understood the change were never in the cab meetings to understand what was happening. So they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead, press the button. So I'm sorry, you opened the thing to Itil. I always thought it was slow. Digital transformation, I'm on board with it. I think there needs to be processes and review, but you have to understand that you can't track and monitor every change. There's automation in place, auto scaling. Come on, I just added a new server. What happened to the old one? What's my CMDB look like? Oh my! You've just opened a whole world of stuff for it.
So there you go. This will be the great, because as we wrap up, we got just a couple minutes left. But this is the perfect closer. That in fact, transformation is about process transformation. It's about the way we do it more than what we use to do the thing with. And Itil, I applaud Itil. That's what happens when no one turns off their ring button before they go through. Our burgers are here. That's how I know we got to shut off. So there you go, because my burger's here. This is the fastest exit. Then I'm going to leave these two fine gentlemen to close it up here because you mistimed our Uber Eats delivery. What we have is that Itil was about ensuring consistency of outcome, not managing and slowing down the process. Mm-hmm. What happened was people that were change resistive used it as a way to slow people down that scared them. And so there you go. I'm going to say, am I out to lunch on that one? It was really about assuring consistency of outcome. And I think digital transformation is about assuring consistency of future preparation. It is building processes that will do what we need them to do. And
now he's getting a call. So we're going to pass it over to Mike to give his closing remarks, and then I'll do mine. We'll wrap up because
how's this for like the weirdest thing? Our first,
you know what? I'll take the laptop. Go ahead, Mike. You and I will run with it while he's going to go get our burgers.
Yeah, so I think Eric is 100% spot on. Itil was about, okay, let's keep something consistent and what's going to work. Great. Whereas digital transformation is more about like, yeah, we think this thing is going to work, but let's move at a certain quick velocity. But there's something to be said there too, right? Because there's a way to move quickly, but ensuring that everything's going to work and be done the way that you're expecting. This is called testing. This is called implementing unit tests and mock tests and integration tests and performance tests and setting up all these systems. So you can move fast and be consistent like you can with Itil. You just have to make sure that you have the proper tests in place.
Should you have Itil before digitally transforming or vice versa or both? All a culture thing and what your business needs, right? Yeah. And Eric hit it right on the head when he said that Itil was meant to be agile and go fast. But what happens is it was implemented in a company culture that was not ready to be transformed and not ready to move fast because they've been there for decades and and so it slowed it down. You wanted to go through the process. You had 3 days. You went through the cab, then you went through the change. And by then, you didn't need to implement it anymore, but you clicked the button because you put in the request.
Yeah.
By the way, that food smells good.
I know. This is a sign that we're getting, and we got to say that while not sponsored, that we are proud to say that the fine folks at Mr. Beast Burgers. So Beast Burgers is supporting the podcasters here today,
unofficially.
Yeah. So if you're a fan of Mr. Beast, which you should be, make sure you go and smash any like button on any of the Mr. Beast stuff. Subscribe to his channel. He's a fantastic creator. Just cracked 100 million subscribers.
Wow. I watched it live.
I'm like, I'll be happy if I hit 7,000 by the end of the month. I'm feeling pretty good about it. We're getting there. But this is why we do this stuff, right? So we've learned a lot, and that we've learned that we haven't learned anything. We haven't learned anything more. That this is not a thing. It's not an instruction set. It's an approach. It's a methodology. And what we have to do is remember why we're doing it and don't misuse the thing, right? Like guardrails are there for testing and automation and for this stuff so that we can confidently increase the velocity of movement, right? We talk about getting to market faster and more buzzwords of like time to market, DevOps, right? Like that's a whole separate podcast unto itself. Is that
I think that's our next one.
I think that's what it is. The idea that DevOps. Why do we have to say DevSecOps? Like, because no one invited the security people to the DevOps meeting, and you're like, but DevOps is different.
Part of it. It's ingrained.
DevOps is different. If you ask a developer what DevOps is, it's a way to get those asshole operators out of my way.
Check that box.
And then this is an Excel podcast. We could say that. And then on the other side of it, the operator. DevOps is a way that we can force those goofy developers to do stuff in our schedule. And it was so funny that we began to use this, like we wield it like a cudgel to like control people, and change management became a way to like slow it all down. So, but what we can't slow down is the smell of gorgeous Mr.
Dude,
Beast.
I am grabbing this.
I know. So I want to give a huge shout out. Of course, thank you very much. We've got the one and only John Meyer. So of course, follow John online. If you don't already, head on over. I'm going to hit his button here. Go to johnmeyer.com. We've got lots of links there. You, of course, can follow the John Meyer podcast.
Wait, I want to add something to that because it's always fun to do. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify.
That's right. Yeah, so hit the notification button. I don't know if it actually works anymore, but
it doesn't. But it's cool to say because it goes together.
And of course, Michael, I mistakenly put up your YouTube here because you do have a fantastic YouTube channel and it's growing. So please do go ahead and hit the subscribe button on Mr. Michael Levan. Where do folks find you when they want to learn about the DevOps goodness? And
yeah, so at the NJ DevOps guy on Twitter, Michael Levan on LinkedIn, both have a lot of content going on. I'm putting out stuff daily, almost pretty much at this point, both free and of course paid because I do need to pay my mortgage.
That's an unfortunate thing. You're a fruitful creator. It's bloody inspiring because I'm just amazed by how well produced your content is. So for folks to, of course, follow John, follow Michael. These are both people that inspire me. Thank you to all the amazing people who are watching live and in the chat. And of course, don't forget, as they say, to smash the like button, appropriately press the like button, gently depress it. I saw something that said, depress button. And I just walked up to it and I said, the climate change is real, right? And the button got really depressed. So that's my dad joke for the day. I am Eric Wright. I am DiscoPosse. Do follow along. Go to DiscoPossePodcast.com. There's a lot of amazing long-form podcasts. We got a lot of stuff coming up. I'll be at VMware Explorer. So if you're coming to VMware Explorer, let's hook up. Let's connect. And we'll probably have this our last live stream before VMware Explorer. We've got some stuff that's going on. AWS reInvent. Let's just say it's huge. It's huge. So do watch the Twitters. We got lots of stuff going on.
I'll be at the Chicago Summit next week.
That's
Don't
right.
forget, follow me along. I've got some awesome stuff coming out. LinkedIn, Twitter, John Meyer can't find me. Oh, and I did drop a TikTok. Yes, this is my first one. Give me a little bit of love and some feedback on it. I did a podcasting gear. First one. I hope the kids like it. But yeah, we got some great events, some live streams coming up. reInvent is going to be huge. So make sure you follow. Eric, thank you so much for having us. This has been a blast.
There you go, folks. That's it. We are here. We are gone. And enjoy. Have a great day, folks. And we'll see you on the other side.